I'm the MC of this event. The language is English. There's simultaneous interpretation available, and you can use the little gadgets for interpretation.
Для русского синхронного перевода, уважаемые гости, используйте гарнитуру на канале 3.
First and foremost, I would like to give the floor to the director of the manuscripts Matenadaran, Mr. Vartan Gregorian. Dear friends, dear guests, you're most welcome to the manuscripts Matenadaran. Today is April 24. All Armenians in Armenia and throughout the world lament this day. It's a lamentable day, but for several years already this day somehow has become the day of opposing darkness with light. Together with the Aurora Humanitarian initiative here in the manuscripts Matenadaran, in this very building, which we may safely call a temple dedicated to light, to scripture, to manuscripts and book. Every year this building is hosting the announcement of the Humanitarians, then sometime thereafter the laureates are determined. Today we have an additional reason to be sad, since one of the three co-founders of the Aurora initiative, Vartan Gregorian, has left us. So today's event is in memoriam, a tribute to his life and in his memory. I would like to express my conviction that for me personally, for many more, Vartan Gregorian has been a role model. His dedication to culture, charity, education, science on a global caliber. This is a person of a global caliber, and he will remain forever as such for the generations to come. I think it's of preponderant importance for us, remembering Vartan Gregorian, his legacy. We should pave the way for the generations to come to follow suit. Thank you, Mr. Gregorian. So with your permission, I would like to once again announce today's event. Commenced, I gladly accepted the invitation to be the MC at this inspiring event for the whole mankind. It will not be surprising if I say that Vartan Gregorian has been and remains a person of unbelievable scale and scope, who impacted the lives of millions of people. I remember how I was reading with great inspiration his autobiography, Road to Home, My Life and Time, where he outlines at great length how, being an Armenian immigrant, he step by step paved the way towards education and science. My impressions were very deep and left a profound impact, which is why I am glad to be present here when we pay tribute to his legacy, which no doubt shall persevere forever. Let's together welcome Vartan Gregorians. I won't be mistaken if I say comrades in arms or brethren, who together with him reimagined for the whole day the message of the day, adding a new depth thereto. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Aurora Humanitarian Initiative's co-founders Nubara Feyan and Ruben Vartanyan, as well as the chairperson of the selection committee, Lord Ara Darzi. Mr. Afeyan is live with us directly from Boston. Mr. Vartanyan and Mr. Darzi, please take your seats on the stage. Gentlemen, I welcome you once again. Let me tell you right away that I've been always watching with interest the videos of Aurora. One just shook me as a testimony to the role as a collective expression of the perception, your collective perception of the role of Vartan Gregorian in this. Let me ask the technician to show this footage so that we relieve this moment altogether.
For all of you, a special surprise that recapitulates the life of a man beloved by all, a life told in chapters by some special friends.
From Tabriz, Iran, to New York City, a poor boy yearning for knowledge, a wandering Armenian who ended up in the society pages of the New York Times. This is the life it has been my privilege to lead.
Now, as I sit in my office under a portrait of Andrew Carnegie, I am given to reflecting on the long voyage that brought me here. In Lebanon, my first mentor, Simon Varatzian, the last prime minister of the short-lived First Republic of Armenia, was a surrogate father, teacher, and benevolent benefactor. He became very fond of my wife, Claire, admiring her courage, tenacity, and independence.
Many mentors, friends, and strangers have helped and guided me along the way, as well, of course, as my wife and children.
I had a great empathy for Carnegie and detected some similarities in our backgrounds. We were both boys from poor families. We both knew in our hearts, in our bones, that education would save us and direct us. That, in fact, education is the key to a better life for everyone, no matter who they are or where they are born.
I certainly was proud and felt triumphant that the boy from Tabriz, who was too poor to own his own volumes and was even unable to borrow and rent books, ended up lending millions of books to the people of New York.
A book to me is still one of the most extraordinary creation of man, because it is a gift of knowledge. A book contains dreams, ideas, and ideals. It contains notion about reality and utopia, about revolutions, and clue about life and freedom and happiness.
To construct and cherish a library is to invest not only in ourselves, but in future generations. A library is a legacy. A library is a mirror to the past and a window to the future.
Knowledge about the world, both its tangible qualities and its ephemeral mysteries, and about each other, our glories and our follies, is the only way to narrow the great gulfs that divide us.
As a young boy in Tabriz, I had read about the terrible devastations wrought by the Great War, including the deportations, atrocities, and genocides perpetrated against the civilian populations.
One thing is clear. Peace will be rooted in understanding how the differences between us, between states, between peoples and nations cause conflict, and in finding ways to managing those differences instead of letting them explode into hostilities.
Andrew Carnegie himself said that he wanted the philanthropies he had begun to do real and permanent good in this world. I had no money, so I've learned through Carnegie's legacy what it is possible to do with money. Give it away. In much the same way I had learned earlier how a boy who had no books could grow up to be a man dedicated to using the resources of many to provide books for millions.
And now, with great emotion from all of us, I want to invite our cherished friend and mentor, Vartan Gregorian, to the stage.
I'm certain that everyone recalled the segments, the passages from The Road to Home, My Life and Times, the autobiography by Vartan Gregorian, which affected us. This brilliant footage was made possible through the efforts of the selection committee and the co-founders. The selection committee comprises members of the Nobel Prize winners, statesmen, politicians, humanitarians, human rights activists, and is called upon to provide recognition for modern-day heroes. Mr. Vartan, I would like to address the first question to you. I'm certain this is a very intimate and precious moment for you. You get very inspired and enthusiastic when you see how great humanitarians living together with us in this world today come together to pay tribute to Vartan Gregorian. I would like us to get back to that moment in time and present to us the significance and the message of that moment for you personally and how Vartan Gregorian responded. It's very difficult to speak reliving this. As for that moment in time, Vartan did not know we were preparing this. That was a surprise for him. He saw the book that Ara was holding and he said, "Why are you holding my book?" And then he saw it with some other participant. He said, "My book has become popular." We said, "Yes, of course. This is truly a unique book that deserves it, and I advise everyone who has not done so yet to peruse it." Unfortunately, he was intended to come over for the presentation of the Armenian translation of his book that was made ready. It was already available in English and Russian, and he's read it in Russian as well. He was a very modest man. It was unacceptable for him for that we somehow singled him out and paid more attention, although he was our elder. But he wanted to underscore his meekness, although his role has been immense in everything that we've done so far. He has been, of course, a person that I learned a lot from. I consider him to be, I consider this to have been one of my happiest moments when I made his acquaintance and had the honor for more than 25 years to communicate with him, not only as a co-founder, but as a great mentor, a teacher, a person that everyone liked and respected. I have yet to see someone like that. A waiter in the restaurant took him as his most closest person. He had this charisma, and I've seen this in very few people since. And he maintained the same attitude with Bill Clinton, Michael Bloomberg, or others. They had great respect for him when organized the Carnegie Foundation events, there maybe was no one in New York who wouldn't come and pay tribute to him. We here in Armenia do not perceive this to the fullest extent because, well, those who sit here in this auditorium, some of them really know his caliber, but Vartan's name, Vartan's role in America and elsewhere in the world, of course, has been a powerful presence and a force. I'm glad that this was one of Marine's ideas to make this footage as a tribute to him. He was carefully and modestly trying to keep away from this. He didn't want to stand out. I'm glad that finally we inaugurated the library in the UWC Diligence School in his name. But that's very little. His role, his approach, to life, his attitude for us were a good learning curve, insight into profound values, human attitudes. Being proud, I'm very proud that we had such an Armenian. Unfortunately, he left us earlier than we all expected. We had great plans. He had great plans to come to Armenia. Last time we talked, 2 days before his death, he said, by the end of the year, Rubenjan, I will retire and move to Armenia for good and will make the Diligence School together the best in the world. What can I say? It's a great loss. It's painful. Shall we go on? Like I already mentioned, we have a direct link to Boston, Massachusetts with Nubar Afeyan. Mr. Afeyan, I would like to address this to you. When you learned the news of Vartan Gregorian's passing, you immediately said, and I quote, "He was a beacon of light, my hero, my teacher. For me and many other immigrants like me, he was a source of inspiration and provided the bearings. He showed us the road to the possible." This was the first communication that arrived in the wake of the news of the loss of Vartan Gregorian. It flooded the media landscape and the social media. Here's my question, in your opinion, what was it that made Vartan Gregorian a source of inspiration for all people and organizations that were of such a high opinion of him? Thank you for the question. I would like to begin by welcoming everyone. I apologize for not being in Armenia for the first time at this event ever. I would very much have liked to be here. I will answer in English. I know there are followers on Facebook and YouTube that are watching this, so perhaps they'll understand me better.
Vartan, as Ruben mentioned, was a guiding light for us. And the simple answer to what made him so prominent and influential was himself, his self, what he represented. And what do I mean by that? I come from a scientific background, and I'm going to violate some law of mathematics in saying that Vartan was not simply an addition of things, but he was a multiplication of things. If you take wisdom, compassion, curiosity, and devotion, and you multiply them together, you get Vartan Gregorian. In my experience, I've interacted with many, many people in the world, and most of them non-Armenian. There was no one who represented a new level of what extraordinary meant, as was Vartan. And in fact, just like in sports, just like in arts, where once in a generation, once in 100 years, somebody comes along and sets a new standard that others compare to, Vartan was that standard. In connection of many, many interviews he's given, one of the more memorable things I have read that he has said, which embodied him, is the following. They asked him at a recent interview from Brown University's magazine, what made him so powerful? What had he done to become so powerful? And his answer was, I have never been interested in power, but I am interested in knowledge. And it happens that knowledge is power. You're sitting today in a bastion of knowledge and books that have recorded historic knowledge of the Armenian culture and heritage. And he would have been at home in Matenadaran because his power was through the knowledge he gathered, the knowledge he contributed to, and the knowledge he spread. Then let me just also mention that at the time of Aurora every year, he would quote one a sentence, which was from Bertolt Brecht's book, Life of Galileo, where he would quote, "Cursed be the land that needs heroes," because he always wanted to remind us that the Aurora Prize that recognized heroes, unfortunately, was the result of human endeavors that violated each other's rights and therefore needed heroes to save them. That's the depth in which he communicated his understanding of human nature and why it is that 100 years or more after the Armenian Genocide, we could still easily find heroes that were walking in the same footsteps and saving people today. Cursed be the land that needs heroes, he would say. The last thing I'll say is that I always found Vartan to be a spirit. He was a physical being, but he was also a spirit. You could not be around him without detecting the spirit. In fact, while he was not overtly religious, he was by any means spiritual. And that's something that very, very few people I've met have achieved. Last, I want to say to all of us and to all those watching that we have watched him in the last few years, and many of us for decades, and we can read his autobiography. And what he has left us is our memories of him to help guide towards doing good and contributing to the world the way he has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Afeyan. Lord Darzi, I may not skip from drawing parallels. Well, you have repeated the road of Vartan to a certain extent. Your childhood was also in the Middle East, in areas where they would seem very, very far from the world centers. But you overcame that difficulty and numerous other difficulties, starting from scratch in a foreign country, succeeded as a person of global scale. Finally, as member of the Aurora jury and then co-chairman, you also cooperated with Vartan and made very hard decisions together. So what was his investment, not as a co-founder of the initiative, but as a member of the commission, of the jury, when the issue was to make that difficult selection? Which were his guiding principles?
It's very generous of you to say that, but if I've achieved 1% of what Vartan has achieved, I'll be very proud. We've lost, and the world has lost, a legend. Armenia and Armenians, everyone, have lost one of the greatest leaders. And I say this without any hesitation. I have met the great and the good. Vartan was different. Vartan was, Nubar described it as his spirit. Although he's gone, I still feel his spirit. I don't think he will ever leave us. He's a man who helped those who don't have by celebrating those who do have. And he was an amazing transmitter of power, knowledge, and very, very unique. He was a great scholar. He was a great philanthropist. He cared. He was kind. When you go with him to a restaurant, the first person he'll talk to is the waiter. He will talk to the driver in the car. He's nice to them. He's kind. You can feel it. He's caring. There's something special about people like that. So, a huge loss, I think, to humanity. And having someone like him being part of the Aurora Prize was a very unique experience, not just for me and the founders, obviously, but also to the great and the good who sat on that committee. When Vartan spoke, they listened. They listened for a number of other attributes that I will share with you, and I wrote these down. I mean, his devotion, as Nubar said, to education and its power to transform life should be engraved in all of our minds as his epitaph. I mean, he was unbelievable. He was brilliant in bringing people together with different backgrounds and also to achieve a common goal. These are disparate group of people. He instilled in all of us the value of tolerance in a world that is most intolerant the year he passes away. Tolerance, multiculturalism. You know, when he spoke about him, you know, he's a man of the world, we all know that, profoundly Armenian. He was immersed in culture, whether that was his adopted home of America. At the same time, he will show a deep interest in Europe. At the same time, he will talk to you about his love of the culture of Iran, where he was born. At the same time, he will talk about Lebanon, where he studied. You know, you tell me one person who could bring all of this together under one roof. He always emphasized common humanity and the relevance of that, and always said, what unites us is always greater than what divides us. You know, if we have that as a motto during COVID, we would have done much, much better. So he was also very proud that the Aurora Prize was actually awarded to people from such diverse communities, but that embodied these principles. I mean, I remember when we selected the Aurora Prize, Kwa Wung, who was a Muslim from Rakhine in Burma, and he selected as one of the charities to support was a Catholic organization with his prize money. You know, that is what he brought to Aurora. He was just an inspiration, really an inspiration. I'll never forget the speech he gave in Khor Virap and dedicated to the beautiful joining of the American ancient and modern traditions. You know, he could do that as well. He could escape centuries and bringing things together, which made sense. A very unique man, and I will certainly miss him a lot.
Thank you very much. The episode that you just recalled from Khor Virap, I believe we're ready to screen it. I invite everyone to look at the screen and listen to Vartan Gregorian's most impressive statement at the 2010 Khor Virap Aurora Prize Award ceremony.
For thousands of years, there has always been sunrise. Not only here, but around the world. There's always been good day anticipated with every sunrise. But the most important thing for us here, bringing symbolic unity of these traditions to Armenians. One was before Christianity, when we worshiped the light and fire, along with Zoroastrians and others. Second is with Christianity, when we celebrated eternity and suffering as a way of redemption, to have a redemption, Golgotha, having a cause and a meaning. And the third one, most important, resurrection. And you saw the transformation in the back, how from the fires and others came calm, and with calm came light. All over the world, when there is a light, we say good morning. Armenians say bariluz, good night. And that has been traditionally our hope, that one day we'll have good light, not for every day, for some time, in order to reconstitute ourselves, the nation we were.
Mr. Vartanyan, once again, I have a question for you. Vartan Gregorian once reflected on the links with the diaspora. We have two lungs. The big lung is Armenian, the smaller one is the diaspora. When one is in jeopardy, the other one has to breathe in its stead until the one in jeopardy is rehabilitated. What does this mean for you? I have to apologize. It's difficult for me to say this in Armenian. I'm really overwhelmed. I will switch to Russian. Hopefully there will be interpretation. It's very difficult to speak today. Being here, I apologize. I don't know whether you have translation there or not, but I just can't put this in words in Armenian. Vartan, as a great person, really understood the importance of the following. There's no one-way traffic. Those two lungs were complementary to each other. They're dependent on each other. We've talked a lot about this with him. How important is this opportunity to lean on those two most important components, pillars of the Armenian nation? How do we arrive at a situation for this flow between these two to be mutually beneficial? Aurora is an international prize. It's an international initiative, you know. We give from the Armenian nation on behalf of the Armenian nation to the rest of the world. When we discussed in 2014 with Nubar and Vartan this idea, it was a very ambitious idea. I would even say a risky one. To tell the world on behalf of the Armenian nation that we owe them words of gratitude. So we discussed how do we preserve this Armenianness, the Armenian roots. And when the pandemic struck last year, I'm glad that Vartan flew in 2012. We planted trees together next to Tzanagabert. We went to Tatev last year. We planned an event in New York. The pandemic struck. And it's understandable that Aurora has a mandate to help other people. We understood we cannot look at what's transpiring in Armenia. Aradarzi, Nubar, myself did a lot as individuals, but as Aurora, the humanitarian initiative, we reacted to what was transpiring in Armenia. When there was the explosion in Beirut, there was a situation that we also had to respond to take part in what was transpiring in Lebanon. Lots of Lebanese died, including those with Armenian roots. Then the war broke out. The conflict in Artsakh came about. We, understanding everything that was happening, told ourselves Aurora is for the world. We're part of the world. Armenia and Artsakh are part of the world. We also have to, among others, respond to what's transpiring here and now. $2 million were appropriated from Aurora for helping Artsakh. More than 70 projects were implementing during the war, after the war, in the wake of the war in Artsakh. And this was backed by also Vartan's philosophy. He had a very fine perception of the fine line between remaining in the international space, preserving one's identity and roots at the same time, offering mutual support and assistance. He was very empathic towards what was happening in diaspora in Armenia, the misunderstanding, the sometimes mutual lack of trust that prevented the creation of the most important competitive advantage that really allows us to position ourselves differently in the 21st century, to perceive us, to place us differently in this world. Not only feeling pride about the past, but to look ahead, knowing that we have a unique experience of interaction between these two most important components of our nation. I very much hope that that which we started together with Vartan will carry on. We will be able to preserve it. I'm thankful to our friend Lord Darzi, who took over this difficult function of preserving this spirit of international selection committee that decides, selects the humanitarians and the finalists, at the same time representing the Armenian nation. This logic, this underlying philosophy that we're part and parcel of the world, we have to find a mutual penetration, interaction between the... This is the main message, philosophical message that Vartan has always borne. That which you're saying is covers a lot of ground. I would have liked you to provide more details, but we're short of time and there's a lot more yet to say. Today is the day of memory of the victims of the Armenian Genocide. Everyone is on standby waiting for their US President Joe Biden to name this crime with the right word. The efforts that Aurora has exerted towards this were viewed by Vartan Gregorian as a decisive step in multiplying the international impact, the global impact of the initiative. What can you say about this, Mr. Afeyan? We can't hear you, Nubar.
Yes. Let me not try to speak in Russian, otherwise the audience will be shocked. So that will be only you. Let me say this. The whole Aurora initiative, which was named after the memory of Aurora Mardiganian and represented the spirit of Aurora, who was forced to witness the atrocities of the Armenian Genocide as a child, and then, against all odds, survived and came to relive the trauma as she tried to tell the story to the world, both on stage and on film, to raise awareness of the genocide. And I think it's important to realize that 100 years ago, humanitarians, and this was a new movement at the time, from the US to the United Kingdom to Russia, many came together, France, to really fight against a crime against humanity and civilization, as they called it. And they coined the term, come to the aid of starving Armenians. We've all heard about that. But I think the irony, but also coming full circle, is the recognition that what we're doing today with Aurora is to actually bear witness to the crimes and atrocities happening today in the world. Who better to witness and to spread to the world so that they're aware and that they get involved such atrocities than descendants of people who survived them. And so that has been the contribution of Aurora. 100 years later, in 2015, we commemorated the centennial in Washington, D.C., and in attendance at a full several thousand person ceremony in the National Cathedral were then Vice President Joseph Biden and US Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power, who later joined the Aurora Selection Committee. We are in fact expecting President Biden's announcement in some 90 minutes or so. Unfortunately, we didn't have quite as much power as needed to time it to this event, and I hope that it will be an important symbolic step to heal, to begin to heal what has been going on for way too long, and perhaps in many, many decades that followed, contributed to further atrocities, and in fact contribute to them now. So I would say that generosity that we accepted 100 years ago, and our ancestors did, that we are now able to give back to the millions of refugees who are being forced to flee dangerous places like our ancestors did, and to be received in new homes and forming new diasporas. All of that is the contribution of Aurora. We are glad that a little after more than 5 years after starting, we have become one of the voices on the world stage to advocate on behalf of the most vulnerable, to support the work of modern-day heroes, and to create a community of them, now further in the memory of Vartan Gregorian, who led all of this with his strong spirit.
Thank you, Mr. Afeyan. Lord Darzi, I have another question reserved for you, this time as the chair of the Selection Committee, you reserved the honor today to announce the names of the humanitarians of the 2021 Aurora Prize. As far as I know, the number of nominations increases with every year. On one occasion, Vartan Gregorian mentioned, I never knew there would be so many worthy people of the Aurora Prize, and I regret that only one becomes a laureate. I'm simply baffled by the success, astounded by the success of this initiative. So please, could you tell us about the process of the selection and the growing impact with every year of the prize? Arajan, with your permission.
It was his dream. He said, I'm dreaming one day Aurora will have no finalists because it will no need to pay tribute to the world will become so better. Will be no need for Aurora. This was his dream.
Yeah. Well, I think from the committee's perspective, it's truly a great honor to be picking up these distinguished men and women from all over the world. And as you correctly pointed out, all of us, including Vartan, was surprised. And this is the story in life. When you go and look for something, it's there. And there are hundreds of people every day, today, everywhere in the world, doing something which is of significant humanitarian impact. They are passionate about what they do. They do it for human rights. They've dedicated their lives in helping others, even put their life at danger in helping others. And to be fair, for me, as Vartan, I was surprised in these nominations, and these people, although have an impact on 1,000 lives in their community, but you have to remember they're also inspiring millions of other people around the world. And I think what we're doing through Aurora was to celebrate what they've achieved. And that in itself is infectious. And we've seen examples of this everywhere. If you look at, Nubar touched on this was launched, Aurora Prize was launched in 2016. And it has helped about 36 projects in 15 designated organizations and 18 countries. It's helped more than 1 million people around the world. That's an amazing achievement. It's a prize and that recognizes those who have really been the modern day heroes. And I'm sure, there are many of them in Armenia and Artsakh, which we will recognize and see and hope that people in this room will nominate them for the next year's prize. And Vartan was proud of these achievements, as we've heard from Nubar, and he always said, it aimed to reconnect and to declare human solidarity. At the time of division, at a time of upheaval, we need something to bring people together. And solidarity is really what Aurora has tried to achieve by recognizing these heroes across the globe. So it's an amazing thing, and it's a huge privilege, really huge privilege to be chairing this. Following Vartan, the problem here is the next time we have our selection committee, I would be asking myself, what would Vartan think? And I'm sure he will whisper in my ears. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, truly, like you mentioned, millions of people's lives were affected by Vartan Gregorian. He is remembered today throughout the world. Here's an example. Minutes before the launch of this event, the Aurora team told us we received a video message from Tom Katina dedicated to Vartan Gregorian and his legacy. Let's watch together.
We all know his story. Born in Iran, almost pretty much orphaned at the age of 15. He took off by himself to Lebanon, ended up in the U.S. as an immigrant, got his PhD at Stanford, went all the way to reach the pinnacle of academic success, which is the presidency of Brown University, my alma mater. And I think doing all this with a sense of humanity, a sense of humility, and a great personal touch. Vartan, you'll be greatly missed. We here in Sudan, especially myself and my wife Nazima and our son Francis, will be praying for you. We just pray that you are resting in the loving arms of our Heavenly Father. God bless you, Vartan. We miss you.
Thank you for the video. Gentlemen, it was very pleasant to hear about the global impact of Aurora and your ideas about Vartan Gregorian's life and his ideas. So we conclude this part of our meeting. Could you please return to your seats in the auditorium? Thank you for this dialogue. With your permission, I would like to say that I'm very glad that we enjoy the presence of
Zadinai also, and he was here when he went in Artsakh in December. He went and he's doing special program to helping the Armenians to feel that we are not alone in the world. And I want to just say thank you, Mirza, for coming also.
So with your permission, we'll move on to the second part of our event. I would like to invite to this stage people who we will talk to about the preservation of Armenian culture and the Armenian world and the contribution of Vartan Gregorian to this. The president of the National Academy of Science of Armenia, Radik Martirosyan, director of Matenadaran, Vartan Gregorian, and Aurora Creative Council chairperson of Aurora, Marine Alles. Mr. Terevonzian, we thank you profoundly for hosting this event under the roof of Matenadaran. We know that through special grants, Aurora is contributing to the preservation of the Armenian heritage and the promotion of Armenian history. For years on end, it has supported initiatives by Matenadaran, various projects. With your permission, I'll list a few: training of tour guides, interactive mapping of Armenian cultural centers, education of young researchers, and the digitization of the main exhibition selection. As a co-founder of Aurora, Vartan Gregorian took great care about this project and held in very high opinion of Matenadaran. What's for you personally and the institution that you're in charge of the impact of the legacy of Vartan Gregorian? Thank you. Yes, truly, Vartan Gregorian was a great friend of Mashtot Matenadaran and still is. All the projects that you just mentioned were truly very useful and still are. The last one you mentioned, the virtual Matenadaran, is the movie that is just being filmed, allows to present Matenadaran showrooms online, something that all major museums have long been doing, and thanks goodness we will enjoy that possibility too. And all of this was, let's put it this way, in a nutshell, Vartan Gregorian was very far-sighted, unimaginably so. In human terms, he had a very interesting philosophy and a special sense of humor. His charisma was felt throughout at every step. It was as though his life was never distinct from his work. It was blended through it's common knowledge that pretty often when an Armenian ends up outside of his native land, living and working there, whenever they succeed sometimes, and Vartan Gregorian has accomplished a lot and succeeded in his life unquestionably, people who succeed, willingly or not, somewhat distance themselves from the national ethnic life, but then there are exceptions to this rule, and Vartan Gregorian was one such exception. by accomplishing all this, a lot was said, I do not want to reiterate, his life success, his brilliant leadership along many lines, educational institutions, universities, libraries, first and foremost New York Public Library, followed by foundations, humanitarian work, charities, all these things considered, not for a single moment he detached himself ever from his ethnic roots. He always, with his busy schedule, nevertheless monitored whatever was transpiring in the national culture. All the news in our education and science preoccupied him. I also want to mention that throughout his life and work, he created a very high standard that everyone looks up to. I read with great pleasure, like many, his memoir, The Road to Home, which is available here in the Armenian language as well. In this book, I was most impressed by the New York Public Library revival that he orchestrated. I think this is just a textbook example, especially for those who are in charge of educational and scientific, cultural institutions intending to accomplish something of significance. They just have to read this section of the book as a textbook, as instructions to action. And coming to his contacts with Matenadaran, yes, truly, when he came and we met and talked, I got this impression that he knows virtually everything, as if he was an employee of this institution. I didn't need to update him on anything. You know, we have this new project or another, because he was very knowledgeable about it all. He came up with such interjections that you felt he was equally aware of whatever transpired elsewhere in Armenia as well. He kept his finger on the pulse of the most important pivotal issues. What can I say? I'm certain that our cooperation with Aurora shall continue and yield new fruits, new projects shall be implemented for us. Vartan Gregorian will remain a guiding light as a person of ultimate caliber, a role model, at least for us, as a person of culture. With your permission, about his academic legacy, let me list a few more projects that are of great importance. In 2018, Vartan Gregorian's scholarship was launched, granted to young scholars and researchers who are studying 20th century episodes of Armenia and Armenian diaspora history. I think it's important that Aurora, being at the focal point of global activity, finds also a possibility to create new communities of Armenian scholars. Vartan Gregorian was a scholar and he had deep knowledge about Armenian and international global history. It was very important for him, for Aurora, to become also a protagonist of promoting and advocating for an educational networks. This environment includes one of the Aurora co-founders, another initiative, UWC Diligent College. In fighting injustice, poverty, and discrimination, education and knowledge come to the forefront. Being an academic, Vartan Gregorian had great respect for the Armenian Academy of Science. Mr. Martirosyan, could you expand a little more on Vartan Gregorian's legacy in the academic world? What's, in your opinion, his contribution to rearing, inspiring young scholars? Very well. I would like to begin by expressing my profound gratitude to Aurora Initiative and leaders thereof for organizing this event, because Vartan Gregorian was a foreign member of the Armenian National Academy of Science, so his passing was a great loss for us, and we therefore express our profound gratitude for this event. I had opportunities on several occasions through my life to meet and converse with Vartan Gregorian. Of course, he was very attentive and took very interestingly even the smallest of events. The most impressive for me was when he started telling about various episodes of his life, starting with early childhood. When in 91 became the president of Brown University, he invited me there. I was then the provost of the Yerevan State University. He invited me to have a look at the universities of the United States, especially those in the Ivy League. How do they organize their educational activities? At the same time, I met there Galina Starovoitova. You may remember the Russian politician lady. So I noticed during our interaction that Vartan was pretty conversant in Russian. I told him, "Did you learn Russian intentionally?" He told me, "Russian is something I have acquired from my childhood years." And then I, of course, followed up and I said, "So what was the reason?" He said, "During the First World War, it's common knowledge that the Soviet Union has deployed troops in Iran, including in Tabriz. There was a contingent." So Vartan said there was a slight opposition to this, not very salient. There was a slight resistance to why Soviet troops are in Iran. The reference is apparently to the Second World War. So our teenagers organized the kids, took them to the gates of the Russian contingent, giving them posters to picket the fence. So what was written on those posters? Go away. So when I was the one that I was holding, it said, "Russian soldier, go home." In this respect, Vartan's work was pretty diverse and varied. I would like to focus our attention on two aspects. Let's begin with his destiny. He always stated that Simon Varatsian played a decisive role in his fate. We know that when he was 15 and moved to Lebanon to pursue his studies further, in an Armenian educational institution back then, Simon Varatsian was in charge of that institution. Simon Varatsian was the prime minister of the First Armenian Republic, as you may know. So back then, during his studies, Vartan became basically an aide to Simon Varatsian. At the same time, Varatsian went blind. He couldn't see. So Vartan told us that every day he spent 3 to 4 hours reading for Varatsian the books, the documents that were much needed. So he read out loud for Varatsian, and he said, of course, apart from reading for him, he, during the intervals, talked to me, and I absorbed his opinions about historical, political, organizational matters, and that had a great impact on my formative years and throughout the rest of my life, said Vartan. I do not know whether he wrote about this anywhere, but he showed me a ring. He said, this is Simon Varatsian's ring that he gave me as a memento. As you may know, Vartan was a Renaissance man. After receiving his university education, he worked at various educational institutions. For lack of time, I will not dwell on those details. He was a brilliant specialist in Eastern history, Oriental history, His fundamental work pertained to Afghan history, the emergence, the birth of Afghanistan. He covered the junction, various episodes of the Oriental and Western histories, especially cultural histories. His doctoral thesis was on exactly this scope. Nevertheless, speaking about these university connections, even I had an opportunity to hear from various American universities, the presidents of these universities have payroll positions specifically dedicated to fundraising for their universities. Vartan was deemed throughout the United States the most accomplished fundraiser in academia. Wherever he was employed, he shined in this. And he did the same for the New York Public Library. The New York Public Library was in demise. The wealth, the tremendous wealth it had possessed, great academic publications in its archives were all in very bad shape. So when Vartan was appointed to lead the New York Public Library, one has to say that books were his passion, and his memoirs cover this at great length, the difficulties and challenges he encountered while in charge of the New York Public Library, but he succeeded to turn it around from dire straits. New wings, new annexes, new equipment, new literature, new books, maintaining what was there already, creating the proper conditions for all this. After he accomplished all this, of course, he also followed it up. He became the focus of attention of headhunters. He was invited over to lead universities and other institutions. After the New York Public Library, he was invited to head the Brown University. The Brown University back then was not enjoying a very high rating, but one has to say that in the course of 5 years, and that was the initial plan, that about $500 million would have been required as an infusion to turn around Brown University. So when he took over from Carnegie Corporation, he set up a $1 billion worth fund for the university through contributions, through his networks, through the contacts, through projects and programs that he succeeded to skillfully gear. This was his organizational greatness. Substance-wise, whatever university he was in, he initiated new ideas, new programs and projects, and he was shining also in organizational matters. It was not incidental that Starovoitova was present there when he was in charge of Brown. Shevardnadze also visited. Politicians, scholars, researchers from Russia were all lining up to meet with Vartan. The epitome of his life was when he, of course, was appointed president of the Carnegie Foundation. To to the end of his life. He implemented great projects here as well, summoning various institutions, organizations, political parties towards the goal of improving the life of mankind. He kept always in focus Armenian science, especially Matenadaran. In fact, to his very last days, before the Aurora initiative, he only came to Armenia twice, and on both occasions it was just to work at Matenadaran. He regretted back then the new building, the new wing of the Matenadaran was not in place. Then he was always thinking it would have been better for the Matenadaran to enjoy better conditions. And of course, Yerevan State University and the Academy of Sciences, especially the humanities institutions thereof, is what he kept in focus. Our faculty members, professors, were hosted by him at Brown. A new curricula was introduced through his efforts as well here at YSU. So it was a great honor for us, of course, when he gave his consent to become a foreign corresponding member of the Armenian Academy of Sciences. So once a year, pedantically, he submitted a report about his activities, because our bylaws claim that our foreign members have to submit annual reports about their endeavors. So it's a great loss. On the other hand, he lived a great life, a full and a happy life, I may say, because having had a very difficult childhood, it's common knowledge that his mother, he grew up without his mother's, and like he writes, the father both physically and intellectually maintained a distance. So he had great difficulties, and the people who helped him get where he ended up, I already mentioned. Simon Vratian's role here was decisive in his formative years. And I think I'll conclude at that. Thank you. Thank you very much. You once again identified the special link Vartan Gregorian had with Matenadaran, and in this respect, holding this event here is of great symbolic significance. An exceptional manuscript is kept here that is called the Humanitarian Folio. Created in the 21st century. Every year it's augmented with new pages dedicated to laureates and Aurora laureates and humanitarians and the impact of the prize. This is a work of art, and it identifies one more strata in the life of Vartan Gregorian, which we remember with great affection. We're talking about his great love for arts and culture. So, Madam Alice, as the chair of Aurora Creative Council, I would like to address this question to you. Under your leadership, Aurora multiplies its mission and vision. On a global level, you've been continually supporting and ensuring the emotional charge and the Armenian dimension of all of these events. With all the finesse, you weave the cultural canvas that comes to life with brilliant performances. When it comes to Aurora events, Aurora defines the threshold of a very high threshold, whether globally or nationally. As a educated person with great life experience, Vartan Gregorian was very sensitive to this. So, in your opinion, Madam Alice, what was contributing to the aesthetic perceptions of Mr. Gregorian? Thank you. You know, I prepared. I was intending to cover some other ground, but since a lot was already been said, it seems to me that it matters for us to really, we come to this world, we do not choose the timing, and we live in the time that's been allocated to us, for better or for worse, being loved a little. But there are some chosen ones who are timeless. They are the offspring of eternity. I believe that Vartan Gregorian is one of these offsprings of eternity. We were all privileged that we enjoyed an opportunity to live in the same time, not only learn from him, but even to collaborate with him. On behalf of the entire staff of Aurora, I would like to express my profound gratitude for the privilege that we were lucky to have, understanding that Vartan Gregorian was the senior among the co-founders, but it's still difficult to come to terms of him not being with us, although he's still with us, because he was a very special kind of person. There are many people out there who write memoirs, but the epigraph to his loved grandmother who nurtured my body, heart, and soul is unique. It was emphasized that he lost his mother early on, and the father did not have a significant role in his upbringing. So, as a person, in human terms, he was nurtured and handed over fundamental truths by his grandmother. When he was awaiting Christmas present, he writes in his memoirs, sometimes the grandmother could not afford to put a present under the pillow, so in the morning she told Vartan, who was saddened by it, Santa was too old, he just didn't remember. So people recalled Vartan being very kind, equally sharing and building his interactions with people of various origin and class, and that was also perhaps the upbringing of this child in the love, surrounded by love and earnestness of his grandmother. He always held high the notion of a teacher. He, of course, was a world-renowned scholar, but he was also a teacher. He was a great organizer, but he was also a teacher. And I would like to quote him here. I owe a debt of gratitude to all my teachers who have instilled a love in me towards a book, towards reading, towards history. The teacher is a compass. It provides the bearing and paves the road for us traveling from one culture to other, reinforcing the knowledge of one's own culture, providing a basis for intellectual growth. Vartan, the first time when he visited the motherland, he recalls that in his memoir, a meeting with Catholicos was again the first. They had an interesting dialogue about being Armenian, about the history of Armenian people. And here's what Vartan has to say about this. Armenians are the trees of civilization. They've broken our limbs many times, but so long as the roots, thanks goodness, survive, we continue like a phoenix to be born again. another quote from Vartan. Here's what Vazgen the First answered: so long as the roots are intact, Armenia shall live on. I would like to conclude with a smile. We're looking at his portrait over there. There is this very kind, faint smile on his face. I think that's the smile that he had on his face when he left us. When he came for the first time to Soviet Armenia, he saw a lot of things here. He understood a lot. There were a lot of things that he couldn't speak up about, or just left it between the lines. In the wake of that visit, when they asked him, what was your impression of Armenia, he said, brilliant, what can I say? That's it. Thank you, Madam Alice. Gentlemen, thank you for sharing your memoirs, the impressions of your personal contacts. We completed our perception of this great Armenian, also for those who didn't know him.
I'm very grateful to all of you for your participation. Please take your seats. We believe that in the hardest part of history, the bright future is in the hands of those who convey hope and give help to the others. That's the vision of Aurora. The biggest legacy of Vartan Gregorian is the devotion with which he helped those who would sacrifice their own lives and freedoms to save the lives of the others. That's what Nubar Afenian and Ruben Vartanyan looked at when establishing Aurora. And now, paying tribute to the memory of Vartan, we are asking Lord Darcy back to the stage to present the Aurora Heroes of 2021.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Once said of his fellow Aurora co-founders, and that's Ruben and Nubar, I am very proud of their vision of sparking a fire, however small, which already have spread all over the world. People are talking about this small spot on the map called Armenia and called Yerevan. Such powerful words always came out of Vartan. Now, some of you will know I'm an Armenian. Apologies for speaking in English. If there's any family here who want to adopt me for a month and I'll behave, I will no doubt I will get my Armenian back and I'll speak not as fluent as what we've heard earlier. But it makes me very, very proud and also very grateful to the co-founders for the opportunity to join Aurora and to chair the Aurora Prize Selection Committee, and to join forces with such outstanding international humanitarians for one purpose and one purpose only: to awaken our common humanity and to celebrate its spirits. As hard as it is to believe that our dear Vartan is gone, as I said earlier, he will forever remain in our hearts and his legacy will live on. And now it's my honor to announce, in memory of Vartan, the names of the 2021 Aurora Humanitarians who are doing an outstanding work in various areas and various continents. Firstly, Grigor Unghong Bonun, who's a mental health activist from Benin for reducing stigma about mental illness and providing mental health services to the people in need across West Africa. And he started this back in 1991. Mr. Agabuno has helped to establish 79 psychiatric clinics and rehab centers in Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Burkina Faso, and Togo. It's estimated around 100,000 people have benefited from their services and returned to their families and their communities. And I can't tell you how relevant mental health is now during the pandemic over the last 12 months. Mr. Agubun has nominated 3 organizations that promote international solidarity, cultivate a sense of belonging for people with intellectual disabilities and mental illness, and provide contemporary psychiatric services. Landrier Regional Committee on Education for International Development, Large Canada Foundation at the Saint-Camille Association. The second is Julienne Lucen-Gueh, a peace and women rights activist from the Democratic Republic of Congo, for her 40-year struggle to prevent and reduce sexual gender-based violence and strengthen women's participation and leadership in peace building, political engagement, and civil society, benefiting thousands of women in her home country. Mrs. Losange has nominated 3 organizations that support grassroots women's initiatives, empower survivors of gender-based violence, and reintegrate internally displaced persons. Fund for Congolese Women, League for Congolese Solidarity, and the Association of Mothers for the Development and Peace. Ruby Alba Castano, a human rights activist from Colombia, for her 30-year struggle to protect the rights of thousands of peasants in the region of Meta, who are subjected to persecution, forced disappearances, land right violations, and displacements. Mrs. Castano has nominated 3 organizations that advocate the rights of the peasants and impoverished communities in Colombia, which are Meta Association for Peasants, Rural Workers and Defenders of the Environment, Clertian Corporation, Norman Peser Bello, and National Federation of Agriculture Unions. Our third nomination, who is Ashwak Moharam. Fourth, sorry. It's late in the day. A medical doctor from Yemen for providing medical treatment, food and essential supplies to the starving population of Hodeidah, a region of Yemen which is facing a humanitarian crisis in the aftermath of the conflict and blockade. Dr. Mohammed's effort has benefited thousands of people since 1999. Dr. Moharam has nominated 2 organizations that protect the future of children and provide free healthcare services to the people affected by the ongoing conflict in Yemen. Save the Children and Doctors Without Borders. Next will be Paul Farmer, a healthcare professional, medical anthropologist, and a distinguished Harvard professor, and an author from the United States of America for championing the provision of life-saving and cost-effective medical care to millions of underprivileged patients in 11 countries across the world since 1987. Dr. Farmer has nominated 2 organizations that deliver healthcare to the world's poorest places and build a global movement of social medicine and educators and practitioners, partners in health and equal health. On behalf of the Aurora Prize Selection Committee, a huge congratulations to these remarkable individuals. It is also my pleasure
to announce that the nomination period for the 2022 Aurora Prize is now officially open. I encourage all of you to put forward inspiring modern-day heroes, and not far from this room, who go to extreme lengths to save, help, and support others. Make sure to go to the www.auroraprize.com and nominate them, please, today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Darcy. It's impossible not to get inspired by this exceptional humanitarians. Thank you, dear guests, for spending the evening with us and for following us online. I propose to conclude this evening by Yo-Yo Ma's performance of Karung by Komitas. He dedicated this performance to Vartan Gregorian and the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative. This is a New York Public Library 2020 Gratitude in Action event by Aurora in New York Public Library. Thank you, and thank you for participation.
To be here tonight with you. I'm here greeting you from Boston to celebrate the Aurora Prize Gala. For me, there's nothing more enjoyable than to be present at an organization that wants to celebrate the good work of others, giving hope for a better society. Tonight, the music I'm playing for you, I'd like to personally dedicate to Vartan Gregorian. He is to me, first and foremost, a scholar, a deep thinker, and a very wise human being. I first met Vartan at the very beginning of the Silk Road Project. I was introduced to him and I was amazed by his fluency in Persian, Arabic, Christian, and Hebraic cultures. He opened new worlds to me that day. For that, I'd like to dedicate a piece of music that honors all of the diaspora of Armenians around the world. Karunk, crane, means something very special because it represents a mix of sorrow and hope. I believe that it's that mixture, Vartan, that has given you a lot of your wisdom. And it is the hope that we have today combined with the sorrow also that is happening right now, as well as over 100 years ago, that we want to have soar and to bring us into a better world.